All right, YouTube folks everywhere. I think we're about to kick this thing into gear. We're getting really close. I've got a script in front of me. I've got the log in front of me. We've got 23 early bird check-ins. So that's a great start. Got got some difficulties this evening. So we'll do our best to get through some of that. The difficulty is me. I've got this killer headache, but we'll see if we can make this thing happen anyway. I've also got this cough, got this respiratory thing going on, and a headache may be part of that. I'm not sure, but stand by. And hopefully I can remember to use the mute for that function this evening. Okay. Let's throw everybody off and go just a few seconds early. Good evening, and welcome to the North Georgia GMRS Regional Net. Tonight I'll be working off of the flagship 675 repeater, and we are linked in with the following repeaters. Sassafras, that's the one I'm on. We're not on Sassafras, it's flagship. I should know better than this. I think this is an indicator of where my mind is tonight and how things are going to go. Next we have Somerville, Lookout Mountain. Blue Ridge is not linked, but it's on a list, and well, there again, that's going to be the evening tonight. McDonough, Noonan, Columbus, Crawford, Moreland, Jersey, Zebulon, and of course our VoIP link, also known as Zello. All of those are linked in, which gives us approximately 31,000 square miles of coverage worldwide, if you consider the network connectivity of Zello, which is pretty amazing, if you ask me. Even if you don't ask me, I just said it's pretty amazing. So there we go. This net takes place every Thursday evening at 7:30 p.m. I'd like to thank everyone who has made the North Georgia GMRS the most expansive and active GMRS network in the country. That would be you folks. All of you participating and engaging in this conversation are what has made this network what it is. Your net control tonight is this guy right here. Sorry. Atlanta 946, WQIR 514. My name is Justin, and I'm located at Studio B in Woodstock, Georgia. On the net, you can talk about your day's activities, radio equipment, or anything you think that we would like to hear about. And that's pretty much what tonight's about, hobbies and interests. This is a family-based network, so we encourage you to get your family involved. Once the floor is open, it is permissible to address other members of the net by their name or tactical unit number. Your FCC call sign is only required when you sign in and sign out of the net. Oh, I lost my place. At this time, I'm going to go ahead and acknowledge our early bird check-ins. And my page has moved. Let's see. It is indeed August 12th. There we go. Okay, so first on the early bird check-ins, I have Atlanta 245 David in Dahlonega has checked in with us this evening. We have Atlanta 253 Donald in Blairsville has checked in with us this evening. Atlanta 313 Jason in Rome is in with us this evening. McDonough 22 Tim in Stockbridge has checked in tonight. Atlanta 780 Houston in Powder Springs is in tonight. Noonan 29 has checked in remarkably early. Marty in Tyrone. Atlanta 242 John in Dawsonville has checked in with us this evening. Atlanta 122 Maureen has come back to hang out with us again tonight in Adairsville. Atlanta 738 Carl in Ackworth has checked in with us tonight. And now I have a string of in and outs. So I have Atlanta 285 CV in Murrayville in and out. Thank you, CV, for monitoring and hanging out with us tonight. It's great to know that you're out there. And as well, Atlanta 286 Lynn in Murrayville. Thank you, Lynn. We have Atlanta 76 David in Duluth is in and out with us this evening. Thank you, David, for checking in with us tonight. We have Atlanta 403 Bobby in White County. Bobby is in and out, and he is monitoring the live stream to let me know if it gets interrupted. So appreciate your efforts there, Bobby. Atlanta 270, Scott incoming, is in and out with us this evening. Atlanta 287, Trey in Murrayville, is also in and out, monitoring tonight. Thanks, Trey, for hanging out there with us. We have Atlanta 538, Rob incoming. Rob is in with us tonight, so looking forward to talking with you here in a little while, Rob. And we have CW23, Curtis in Nicholson, has checked in and out with us this evening. Curtis, it's great to hear you on the net tonight, and look forward to catching up with you again sometime very soon. Atlanta 292, Derek in Rockmart. Thank you, Derek, for clearing up that confusion. My mind is a bit of a fog this evening, so you all have to forgive me for that. We'll just muddle through this the best we can. Atlanta 442, Craig in Ackworth, is in with us this evening. McDonough 32, Lance in McDonough, is in with us this evening. Atlanta 721, David in Southwest Paulding County, is in with us this evening. And I heard just as I was leaving the room, and I think I got this right, Atlanta 434, Ron incoming. I believe this is the last evening of his pool tournament, so he'll be able to hang out with us next week, but for tonight he's in and out. Let me let this radio have a little bit of a break, and I'll come right back. Alright, so my script says that the next thing I'm supposed to do is take VoIP check-ins. However, I think we probably have all of those. So with that in mind, I'm just going to say I'm going to take check-ins from the flagship machine. Anyone that wishes to check in on the flagship machine, including VoIP check-ins and including guests, visitors, first-time check-ins, all of the above. Even if you don't have a TAC number, if you have a GMRS, a valid GMRS license, I would welcome you to check into tonight's net and join in on the conversation. And this is your time. So I'm going to stand by and listen for some additional check-ins. Anyone on the flagship machine, VoIP, or any new users, guests, or visitors.
Hope everybody's doing well on the net tonight.
Station checking in from Oklahoma City. Would you please come back? All right, Atlanta 32. Chris in Oklahoma City, keeping those 18 wheels turning. Chris, do you have 18 wheels, or do you have one of those fancy new 10-wheelers? All right. Well, back in my day, they all had 18 wheels, but I noticed that some of them have the super singles now, and that changes things a little bit. But nonetheless, be safe out there, Chris. Thanks for hanging out with us, and we've got you in the log as in and out. And also, I heard Atlanta 26 Flip from the beautiful Druid Hills checking in. It was great to see you last week, Flip, and looking forward to hanging out with all of you again sometime very soon. Do we have any additional check-ins from the flagship machine or VoIP or any new users or guests?
This is Atlanta 138 WRCA 209 checking in and out of the repeater. I've got band practice tonight.
This is McDonough 22. Just want to let you know your audio dropped out on me for a little over 2 minutes while while you were running through the early check-in list there, right in the middle of the sentence. It just stopped for about 2.5 minutes before you came back on, and we're taking new check-ins. So just thought you might want to know.
All right. Thank you for that, Tim. Even though I've turned the timeout timer off on this radio, it still exists out there on some of the repeaters. So I'll have to work in some breaks into my script so that we can let those repeaters cool off and keep up. Let me go ahead and acknowledge Atlanta 138, Robert in Auburn, in and out tonight. He has band practice. Sometimes he's able to come back after practice, so we'll see if he makes it. Any additional flagship check-ins? Actually, let's go ahead and open it up to any repeater anywhere, including flagship and including VoIP check-ins. Also, including any new users, visitors, or guests. Please call net control now.
This is Atlanta 417 WRER 451, William, Auburn, Georgia, checking in.
This is Atlanta 657, Sam in Canton, checking in.
This is Atlanta 57 WQZC 82, Andrew in Holly Springs.
WRMC 853, Atlanta 252, Shad, Emerson, Georgia, checking in. This is
WRMC 799, Atlanta 312, Stacy checking in.
This is Atlanta 750, WRMR 367, Jeff in Waleska, checking in.
WRNB 393, Atlanta 753, on Zillow in Land O'Lakes. This is Mike checking in and out.
Sorry about that, YouTube.
501 WQIU 896, Paul and Jefferson, checking in and out.
All right, let me go ahead and acknowledge what I have right there. You guys have given me a couple of minutes to let this radio cool down a bit. Thank you for that. We have Atlanta 417, William in Auburn. Thank you, William, for checking in tonight. We have 657, Sam in Canton, also checking in tonight. We have Atlanta 57, Andrew in Holly Springs. It's great to hear from you, Andrew. Thank you for your check-in. We have Atlanta 252, Shad in Emerson in tonight. Thank you, Shad. Atlanta 313, Stacy also in Emerson. Thank you, Stacy, for checking in tonight. We have Atlanta 750, Jeff in Waleska has checked in tonight. And we have a couple of in and outs. We have Atlanta 753, Mike from Land O'Lakes, Florida, using Zello. Thank you, Mike, for checking in tonight and for listening in. It's great to have you along. And it's nice knowing that you're out there monitoring us and enjoying the program. Also, we have Atlanta 501, Paul in Jefferson, in and out. I'm going to take one more break for any more check-ins, and then we'll get things started.
My bad, correct that 501, make that 503. Wrong, Paul. 503, WQIU 896, Paul and Jefferson.
Thank you, Paul. That correction's been made.
120 WRKS 247. Scott down in Moreland, checking in and out, Justin.
Atlanta 83, WRMP 277, in and out, please, Justin.
All right, 503 is from Buford. All right, we made that correction to Atlanta 503. Paul and Buford got you in and out tonight. We have Moreland 20, Scott in Moreland, also in and out tonight. Thank you, Scott, for checking in. It's great to hear from you. And we have Atlanta 83, Pete in Dahlonega, in and out tonight. It's great to know you're listening in and hanging out with us. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and kick things into gear tonight. We were going to talk about summertime cleaning and family guests coming to visit, but Atlanta 442 had a better idea. And so let's talk instead about things that are, of personal interest to us, hobbies, maybe outside of radio, maybe radio is all that you do, but things that you like to do other than hanging out on the air, or skills or things that you like to engage in. I know for some of us it's playing billiards, it's riding motorcycles, it's hanging out at a tiki bar. There's many things that we all enjoy, and I'd like to hear from as many of you as we can. And we'll get to know one another. Maybe we'll find out that someone along the way has common interests, and we can find a new riding buddy or a new member of a pool tournament or a league. I don't know. Do we have any bowlers in the group? I know that Houston used to like to get his exercise. I'm not sure if he's still doing that or not, but we'll find out here in just a little bit. So, but before we do all of that, we have a little tragedy that's happened this week, and that is that one of ours has passed away, and that would be McCoy Jones. McCoy is a relatively new member to North Georgia Gmrs, and it's very sad news to have learned from his son that McCoy is no longer with us. And with that, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge and show some respect, and so please join me for 60 seconds of silence in honor of McCoy Jones. Thank you, everyone, for allowing me to show that respect to McCoy. That breaks my heart for the family. I don't have any of the details, but it's never easy to lose one, and I just at a loss for words. So silence is the best thing in that circumstance for me. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and move forward with the evening on to lighter and funner things, and we'll talk about some of our interests outside of radio. One of the things that I like to do is cook and just spend time out there enjoying that space of zen that 947 and I have created. I really enjoy spending time out there, just being outdoors in the sunshine and watching. She's got a million bird feeders out there, so we get buzzed by the birds. You know, when we go out there to hang out, we're kind of invading their space, and they let us know it. It's very enjoyable, so that's something that I take a lot of pleasure in. Is just being in that space for whatever period of time that I can get. And so Atlanta 245, David in Dahlonega. Do you have any interests or hobbies that you'd like to share with the group?
Well, I guess what keeps me the most busy, I'm a member of the radio club here in Dahlonega, and a member of the Lumpkin County Aries. We do a lot of activities with Aries and the club, so that's my main hobby. I do enjoy that. Matter of fact, we had an exercise for sending WinLink emails in the field last Saturday. That's why I couldn't make it to the picnic. So I was kind of disappointed I didn't get to come visit with everybody. But I'm glad that everyone had a good time, and I look forward to hearing about it throughout the evening. And hope everyone's having a great day. And that's it for me. I'll send it back to Net Control.
Well, that's interesting stuff, David. And you know, the WinLink and the Aries exercises. You know, that's. I've said it before, and it'll probably sound like a broken record, but there's just no end to the things that we can engage in, and do with the radio hobby. Now, we're a little bit limited in GMRS, and if you want to engage in things like WinLink, or be involved in any Aries group or any of the amateur radio clubs, you are going to have to get an amateur radio license. Well, that's probably not entirely true. I would be willing to bet there are many amateur radio clubs out there that would accept members without a license. And there are things that you can do to contribute and to participate. You can show up at the field day events. You can provide, you know, off-the-air support. There's a lot of work that needs to be done that doesn't involve someone keying a microphone. And if you have a control operator available, you can get on the air in amateur radio without a license. But it's so much better for those that are participating if they can get a license. So, and you know, the technician license is a great place to start, and I highly encourage our membership, if they have an interest in radio beyond GMRS, to pursue that. Now, I know that there are some. McDonough 22, for instance, has repeatedly said he enjoys GMRS radio, and that's enough for him, and he's just not interested in pursuing a ham radio license. And I can understand that to be the truth for not only Tim, but for a lot of people. And in some ways, like, yeah, that's enough. And if it's enough for you, then that's all that matters. But for those that want to participate in things beyond GMRS, amateur radio is a hobby that touches everything. You can engage in satellite communications in amateur radio. You can engage in location tracking with the amateur radio. Sporting events. So there's a lot of marathon races and bicycle races and that sort of thing, where amateur radio community will come alongside those events and organize a communications network for on-site safety, and you know, if there are any emergency services that are needed, the hams can relay information quickly and specifically to make those things happen. Weather events, storm chasing and weather spotting is a significant activity in the amateur radio community. And you know, there's just no end. I mean, if you can think of something that you can do, you can probably do it with amateur radio. And in a lot of cases, GMRS radio too, but you know, the amateur radio side of things has a depth of experience in many of those functions. Another cool thing that amateur radios are able to do, and we've even done this with GMRS, are balloons. We've launched helium balloons, weather balloons, with repeaters on board, and it's been 4, maybe 5 years ago, but we launched one. It was a weather balloon. It reached 103,800 feet was the last recorded altitude that we had. That balloon had a ham radio repeater on it, and it also had a GMRS repeater on it. So we were able to make contact with that balloon as it was traveling in the upper atmosphere, and hear ourselves parroted back when we would contact it. It was a very, very cool thing. There have been other balloon launches that the BGMRC Club has engaged in as well, and we've been able to follow along and enjoy that. So there's no end to what we can do in the radio hobby, and WinLink and Aries are just a couple of those things, just a couple. So good stuff, David, and maybe next time we have a gathering, we'll see you there.
Hey, Justin, just a real quick comment. Our club, I think I joined that radio club. I didn't even have a ham license when I joined them. So I'm sure you can get involved with your local club if you're interested. Just a quick comment.
Yeah, and I'm glad you came back with that, because I believe that's probably true at a lot of clubs. So, you know, for our membership, if that's something that interests you, find the nearest ham radio club to you. They're all over the place, and definitely look into getting involved. And once you're involved, they'll help you with testing, and they'll help you get your license. That's one of the great joys of the ham radio community is bringing in new hams. Let me break. One of those cough situations sneak up on me. So thank you for all that, David. I appreciate that. Understand that Zello may be dropping in and out. My suspicion is that is a Vox issue, so we may have to look at making some adjustments to those settings. I'm not sure anything can be done on the fly, but we'll have to try to pay attention to that. Atlanta 253, Donald in Blairsville. Do you have any interests or hobbies you'd like to share with the group?
Good evening, Justin, and good evening to the rest of the net. I'd just like to be outside a lot when I can.
Yeah, I understand. Getting outdoors and being one with nature is something very enjoyable. You know, it's funny because when we lived in Fort Wayne, I didn't really care for the outdoors. I didn't, you know, I grew up on a farm. I spent plenty of time in the woods, plenty of time in the fields, plenty of time in the barns, way too much time in the barns. And that chicken barn, I'll tell you what, if I never set foot in a chicken barn again, holy cow. But in any case, we lived in town there, and I just really didn't care that much for being outside. I was great with just hanging out indoors, watching TV, and relaxing in the living room, and playing games with the kids, and you know, that sort of thing. I wasn't much of an outdoor person, but coming to Georgia has absolutely changed that, and I love getting out of the house. So I completely relate. It's good stuff, Donald, and hope that you can stay out of hot water. Or, I don't know, maybe you're looking for hot water right now, but I know you love those hot tubs. So good stuff. With that, I'm going to move on to Atlanta, 313. Jason in Rome. Jason, do you have any hobbies or interests you'd like to share with the group?
Yes, Mr. Justin, I do. I enjoy getting out, finding new trails on new mountains safely, and just having a wonderful day outside.
Copy that. Now, on these trails, are you hiking? Are you riding like a dirt bike, or is it side by side? What do you do on these trails?
A few others. We're in the 13, and we just learned how to walk the trails. And we have to make some money. That way we know the safest way to do it. We work together.
Yeah, I lost you on part of that, Jason, but I heard you saying that you walk the trails to find the safest way to do it. I'm assuming that you're walking these trails and kind of scouting ahead of maybe a motorized vehicle. Is that right, or am I off base?
Sometimes we have to do search and rescue, and a lot of the ones around here, we all get together on some weekends where the major things happen, so we'll know the best route in and the best route out, so nobody gets hurt, the volunteers or the patients.
Oh, so you're doing some SAR stuff. Okay. Well, yeah, and getting out there and knowing the trails before an event occurs is good stuff, and that's an important service to provide the community. And you say you like to get out on new mountains. I guess that's mostly so that if you have to engage in SAR, that you're familiar with that. So that's good stuff. Jason, I wish we had a better copy on you because I'd like to ask more questions, but it's kind of tough hearing you. Hopefully we can figure out a way to get you a little better signal from Rome there. One of these days, I think sometime later this year, we hope to have a repeater installed there on that big hill on the other side, just the backside of Rome, with all those other towers. The railroad's got a tower up there, yeah, that would be a very cool thing and would help you a lot. But meanwhile, we'll have to see what we can do to get you in here a little bit better, because you're not holding the repeater, you're dropping in and out at times. So, but with that, Jason, I'm going to go ahead and move on to McDonough 22. His ears are burning because I was talking about him a minute ago, but let's see if Tim has any interests or hobbies that he'd like to share with the group.
Good evening again, Justin, and the rest of the net there. I don't have a whole lot of time or money for hobbies anymore. There's a lot of things that I used to love to do, and used to do quite a bit of fishing. Used to spend a lot of time down at Lake Oconee, but it's been a few years. Had some friends down there that had boats, and another friend had boats on Lake Hartwell. I love being out on the lake on the boat. My uncle always had a boat when I was growing up, and we'd always go up to Lake Allatoona on Allatoona on the weekends during the summers, and they had a little trailer up there. So I've always enjoyed boating, but just don't know anyone with a boat anymore, and I sure can't afford one. But I do. I love playing the guitar for my own enjoyment, and being on the radio and talking to these nice people here is pretty much it these days. So I guess I'll turn it back to you. That's about it.
All right, Tim, and yeah, you can call it Lake Allatoona. That's just fine with me. That's a lake that's right behind us here. We're just 5 minutes from it. And we've spent a lot of time on that lake as well. My boat is currently out of commission, and I just haven't, I have all these other interests, so I haven't spent any time on working on the boat. And that's what needs to happen. I just need to spend some time on it. I think it's a minor problem, but as time goes on, it just becomes less and less of an issue. And 947 says she wants to sell the boat now, so that's probably going to happen. We'll probably sell it if I don't get it going this summer, and it doesn't look at this point. It doesn't look like I will. We'll probably sell it. So if you want to be a boat owner, Tim, you just let me know. But I hear you, and spending time on the lake is a great place to spend your time. I really enjoy being on the water. Just to get out into the lake and shut the motor off and float around is very enjoyable to me. Now, Julie and the kids always wanted to go someplace where they could play and swim and get in the water. I don't really want to get in the water. I just want to be on the water, and that was the thing for me. Now, as far as fishing goes, I've never been much of a fisherman. I don't have the patience for it, and I certainly don't have any fishing skills, and but that's another story. So good stuff, Tim, and yeah, keep practicing on that guitar. One of these days, we'll have a get-together down your way that you can attend, and you can break out the guitar and play for us. Thank you for all of that. Next on my list is Atlanta 780 Houston in Powder Springs.
Hi, good evening, Justin. Good evening to the rest of the group. Well, you know, I was an avid bowler at that one time, and had never got back to it yet since I got my knees replaced. My two cohorts I used to bowl with, one, my brother, he's got a bad back now, and the other one needs a kneecap, so one of these days we may get back to it. It just may be a little slow at it. As far as the other hobbies, I think we've done about all of them, as far as remote control planes and boats and real planes and fishing and real boats, and yeah, it goes back a long ways, but I think now it's just radio.
Well, and you know, just radio is a small statement that covers a big area, because you can do just radio with so many different things, and there's just no end to it. So, yeah, I suppose at some point some of the hobbies, you know, some of the interests that I've had along the way have come and gone. You know, one of the things that I very, very much enjoyed doing was just running live sound at church. Had a great band and a great PA system and a pretty okay analog mixing board, and I really enjoyed putting a good mix together with the band. One of the things that I just really thrived on. I tried to do that professionally for a while. But you know, in Fort Wayne, there's just no market there for it. There's so many people that do it for so cheap that, you know, if you really want to try to make a living doing that kind of work, you got to get out of that market. And I wasn't smart enough to get out, so I like to starve trying to do that kind of work professionally. Had a lot of money invested in equipment and sound gear, lights, and trailers to haul it in, and you know, just tough to even break even with that stuff. So, but radio, you can spend a lot of money in radio, but you know, radio equipment holds its value well, and it serves for a long time. So it's all good investments to make. So thank you for that, Houston. Next on my list, Noonan 29, Marty and Tyrone. I think Marty can likely attest to the challenges of making a living out of professional audio.
Well, I don't know what to say there. I enjoy my peanut butter and jelly and tuna fish a lot. Over the years, that's been a staple diet, as is true of many musicians, sound technicians, and probably actors, actresses, and everything else in the entertainment field. However, as you mentioned there, I heard a bunch of stuff that kind of triggered my excitement here. And as you may have noticed, since I know you've seen my Facebook stuff here, I recently had a wonderful reset here. A wonderful opportunity to do the sound for the Glenn Miller Orchestra, which is one of the hallmarks of my time in doing sound. And I've done sticks, I've done some pretty substantial people. Alice Cooper, I can go on a list of B and A listers from a long time ago that I did that and been playing music for 50 years. But I never got to do the Glenn Miller Orchestra till just this past week, which was just absolutely phenomenal. Just a wonderful, wonderful show, great time. I've got some great tracks. I'll be making some in MP3s, and I'll post them out there on Facebook as well. As for guitar, I've been playing for 50 years, and in the course of doing that, I've got stories that could go on and on and on. But my forte as music would probably be living on tuna and peanut butter, like I mentioned earlier. It's just a blessing that the computer business took off, because that's what allowed me to actually afford to play music for 50 years. I think that's a large part of it. But I'll leave it at that. Maybe someday we'll all get together again and certainly have an opportunity to sit down and play some music. I play 4 instruments myself and would be just thrilled for us all to get together and do something like that. I think it would just be fantastic. Back to net from Noonan 29.
Jake and Elwood, we got to get the band back together. On a mission from God. Good stuff. Glad to hear it. And yeah, the tuna fish and peanut butter I can completely relate to. There were many periods of time where the cupboards were bare, and we existed on the grace of those around us. But I remember this one time. Well, I'd rather not remember it. So, in any case, good stuff, Marty, and always a pleasure to hear the stories. Atlanta 242, John in Dawsonville. Do you have any hobbies or interests you'd like to share with the group?
Yeah, good evening, everybody. So I am a new member. I joined a couple of days ago and have just gotten into the Gmrs family, I guess. As far as hobbies go, I'm a Jeep enthusiast. I own a Gladiator today, came from a four-door JK before that. Owned a CJ, an 80s model CJ prior to that. So enjoy getting out, enjoying the outdoors by means of four-wheel drive. And we have determined that GMRS is probably a better way to communicate today than the legacy CBs as far as air travel goes and communication. Very interested in GMRS. I came up from a family with ham licenses. Went to kids' days growing up, and I guess just seeing the ARRL license book to study and train and obtain a license. I've had several of them, and after opening the cover, it scared me off a little bit, but I think the GMRS bands will be a lot easier to get into and start understanding, and then start studying for a technician license. This is ATL 242, over.
Well, good stuff, John. And yeah, we have a Jeep here at the household. It's actually Julie's Jeep. It's a grade A Class 1 mall crawler, but that's okay. It really doesn't do any off-road work, but Julie loves it, and she drives it every day, and it's got a GMRS radio in it. So, but we just don't do any of the trail stuff. It's not something that I'm drawn to, and she doesn't want to hurt her Jeep. So. We'll enjoy that from the spectator's perspective, I suppose. I think that she would very much enjoy going to one of those crawling events and watching, but no interest in competing. But yeah, the four-wheel drive community, the trail side by sides, and the even the dirt bike trail riding community could all utilize GMRS radio in those activities, and escape from the noise of AM CB radio and get into a much higher quality band, and have the luxury of 50 watts. Even if you're simplex, if you're on the trail, 50 watts is going to do a whole lot better than a standard 4 watt or 5 watt CB radio. And I think that there's a lot to be offered for GMRS in the trail riding and 4x4 and that community. So glad that you found us here, and hope that you're able to also utilize GMRS in those other activities. I think it's becoming more and more common, and I think you'll very likely find many more in the Jeep community that are coming over to GMRS for many of those reasons. So good stuff. And family of hams. One thing that that 947 and I used that I feel was a very, very powerful tool for us to get our license. And remember that 947 she's not technically inclined. She doesn't know electricity. She doesn't know radio. She's an appliance operator, and but yet she was able to use hamstudy.org, the app that you put on your phone, and it's a flashcard type of an app, but the algorithm is such that the questions that you get right, it kind of, all right, so you've mastered that material, and the stuff that you get wrong, it cycles those questions in front of you more frequently. So it's a good study tool, and it's an excellent mechanism to use to get yourself ready for the technician. Julie and I used that both for the technician and the general. I think Julie is probably content with her general license. I don't think she's going to move any further. I really need to get off my duff and get busy studying for the extra, and but I haven't really taken that seriously yet. And it kind of, my best opportunity to do that was during COVID. All the downtime, not having to spend all that time commuting back and forth to work. That would have been a great time for me to have done that, but I've kind of wasted it, and we'll see what happens here. But maybe I can still get it done before I go back to work. But good stuff, John, and welcome. Glad to hear this. So this is your first check-in on the North Georgia GMRS net?
Yeah, Justin, it's my first check-in, and I appreciate the info on the online training. I'll certainly take a look at it and download the app. I know my granddad lives down in Milledgeville. He's K4TW, Kilowatt 4 Tango with, and he would certainly appreciate for me to get the ham license, and he's got a lot of equipment to hand off to the first grandchild of his that obtains the license. I've just waited a few decades to do it.
Well, that is awesome. I recently met, I believe his name was Mark, met a fella at the gathering last week, and he's just become interested in radio, and he's interested in pursuing his ham license. His dad was a ham. Unfortunately, his dad has passed away, and his dad passed away far enough back that, before he got bitten by the radio bug, he went ahead and sold off his dad's equipment. So it's kind of an unfortunate situation. It would have been really cool. I know that his dad would have been overjoyed at knowing that his son was taking over his radio station and operating it. Hopefully he'll be able to take over the call sign and do that. So and maybe one day you'll be able to take over your grandfather's call sign, but he's got to give it up first. We're not looking forward to that. But good stuff, John, and excited to know that radio has become an interest for you. Next on my list is another relatively new member, Maureen. It was a pleasure to meet you at the gathering last week, Maureen. Do you have any interests or hobbies you'd like to share with the group?
Hey, Justin. Yeah, actually I want to give a big shout out first to Mike and Gary and Diana and Julie and you and the whole group. It was great to meet you all, and it was very interesting to get to see faces and associate them with their voices. That was really fun last week. As for hobbies, gosh, I love trail biking. So not people who go speeding down the trails. I'm just talking like dawdling around and taking my bike out to Savannah to visit my daughter before. Walking, hiking, sailing, that's one thing that they don't do out here. I came out, I'm a refugee from California, so we used to sail out there, and love to just sit in the silence and listen to the water bubbling under my feet with, bridges and rivers and ocean waves and all of that. And I would love to be able to get back into business myself again, so I'd have time to do that, because I'm getting really burned out on what I do.
Well, fantastic. Trail biking. Are you talking bicycle trails like mountain bikes, or are you talking about motorbikes? But you don't like to go fast. You just kind of ride around.
I have actually a hybrid bike, but it's a bicycle that'll do both trails and off-road, plus just cruising down the road if I wanted to as well. It's one of the new ones, and I'm really excited about it.
Very cool. Very good stuff. And you mentioned Savannah. Savannah is another place of zen for me. I love Savannah. I love walking around the parks and the squares and the history. And, what's really fun is to find somebody local that wants to talk about Savannah, because they really seem to love the place they're at. And I love going there just to visit and spend time in that space. Like I say, it's kind of a place of zen for 947 and me. We really enjoy Savannah. So, I never considered taking bikes to Savannah, but that would be a great way to get around. But typically, everything that we do, that we want to do in Savannah, we can do on foot. So there are tours that walk around the various parks. We'll join in on those tours sometimes, because you can take the same tour 2 or 3 times and learn new stuff each time. And being able to tour some of those houses is also very cool. I very much enjoy that. And then the bars, they just have an air about them that I really feel at peace at when I go there. I really enjoy that. Have a great time. So good stuff. And you mentioned sailing. I know that there is a sailboat club on Lake Allatoona. Now, this is not the same as sailing on the ocean. And if you wanted to get a taste of sailing on the ocean, then you'll have to meet up with Atlanta 210 and 211. That would be Stephen and Marla Hendricks. They have purchased a sailboat, and they sailed it from the place they purchased it. They intended to sail it to Georgia, but they ended up having to stop somewhere along the way for some repairs. And right now they are struggling with a mechanic and dealing with things remotely and trying not to get ripped off. And but they have acquired a sailing boat, and I think they intend to spend some significant time on that craft. So you'll have to make friends with Atlanta 210 and 211, Stephen and Marla, and see if you can hang out on their sailboat from time to time. So that'll be coming up soon. Good stuff, Maureen. It's great to hear from you. It was great to meet you the other day and your family. I understand several were not there, and I can understand that. Mom had to stay home with a couple of the kids, but it was fantastic meeting everyone, and what an awesome crew. Next on my list is Atlanta 738, Carl, right around the bend here in Ackworth. Carl, do you have any hobbies or interests you'd like to share with the group?
Yes, Justin, this is Atlanta 738, Carl, and I'm the one that you were talking about that sold all his dad's ham gear, regrettably. But, I do have the bug of this now. But on to hobbies, it would be mostly kayak fishing. I do own a Jeep, so my wife and I do a lot of the four-wheel driving. That's where the Gmrs got started. And camping, and that's about, and hunting and fishing, but I haven't done much of those as of late. And that's about it for me right now.
Yes, it was great meeting you, Carl. For whatever reason I had in mind, your name was Mark. I'm sorry about that. But, yeah, that story resonated with me about your dad. And, I have to think that he would just be very proud and very happy to know that you've come to the place where you're enjoying radio now. And hopefully that's something that you'll be able to spread to. Did you mention that one of your sons had acquired his equipment? Did I get that right?
No, sir. I ended up selling it to my mechanic, my auto mechanic son expressed an interest in amateur radio, and I told him I had all this gear, and he's the one that bought it all.
Understand. Okay. All right. Well, it's not in the family, but hopefully it's being put to good use and being appreciated for what it is. But now is a great time to begin assembling your own shack. And man, there's just no end to how you can do that. It can be the simplest of things, and just be an HT on an end table, as McDonough 22 typically operates. Or you could have a very elaborate setup with towers and multiple antennas. And Heathkit Radio Shop is Atlanta 60 has set up, or anything in between. So there's no end to how you can do that and how far you can go. And again, the amateur license is attainable. So don't be intimidated by that test. Check out that online the app that you can install on your phone, hamstudy.org, and download that to your phone and just begin going through the study there. Or you can be like Atlanta 123, and you can go ahead and invest the time and effort in studying for your license. And while you're in there studying for your technician, spend a little time with the general. And while you're in there looking at the general, spend a little time with the extra, because one thing that you'll find when you go to test for your license, and I think that all the clubs do this, but I could be mistaken. You pay typically $15 to take your test. Now, if you take your test with ngvet.org, that's the North Georgia Volunteer Examination Team. If you take your test with them, there's no charge. It's completely free, and they file electronically, which means that your license will get posted within typically hours, sometimes less than an hour, and very rarely does it take more than 24 hours. If you test with a lot of the local ham clubs and they mail your paperwork in, you may be 2 or 3 weeks before you see your license. So one thing to keep in mind is if they're filing electronically or if they're filing the snail mail way. But when you take your test, when you take your first test for technician and you pass it, one of the first things they're going to say is, do you want to test for general? And if you spent a little bit of time in a general, you may be able to take that test and pass it. Now, I didn't spend any time with the general material. I didn't know that was going to happen. So when I took my test for technician, that's all that I'd looked at. I hadn't spent even a minute looking at the general license material. I took the general test and I missed it by one question. Had I spent a little bit of time with that, I might have been able to pass technician and general in one sitting. But Atlanta 123 has pulled off the hat trick, and he sat down for his ham test and he got all three at once. He got his technician, then he passed his general, and then he passed his extra, all in one sitting. So couldn't be prouder of one of our members being able to do that. So that's also possible, and it's attainable. But you got to start somewhere, and hamstudy.org is a great place to start. Next on my list I have Atlanta 285 CV in Murrayville. Excuse me one moment. I've got that cough that sneaks up on me from time to time, but I think I got that one worked out. So CV is in and out with us this evening, but thank you, CV, for monitoring and listening in, and for all the other things behind the scenes that you are doing to help keep this organization great. Also, we have Atlanta 286. Lynn in Murrayville is in and out tonight. Thank you, Lynn. Appreciate all of that, and it's great to have you in here. Atlanta 7-6, David in Duluth is in and out. Thank you, David, for checking in tonight. Appreciate you having monitoring with us. And we have Atlanta 403, Bobby in White County, also in and out tonight. Bobby, I appreciate your help. Looks like so far we haven't dropped off of the live stream, so that's good. I think minimal button pressing and minimal scene changes helps, but who knows? I still haven't figured out what causes us to drop the stream. Next on my list is Atlanta 270, Scott incoming, also in and out. Thank you, Scott, for checking in tonight. It's great to hear from you. Atlanta 287, Trey in Murrayville, in and out. Trey, it's great to hear from you, and thanks for monitoring tonight. We have Atlanta 538, Rob incoming. Rob is actually checked in tonight. So, Rob, do you have any hobbies or interests you'd like to share with the group?
Good evening, Justin, and good evening to the rest of the net. Yeah, I've got a bunch of hobbies. I've got an old car that I've been slowly restoring for years. It's on the road, but it's always a work in progress. I restore and use and collect antique outboard motors. And one of the things that my wife and I have just recently gotten into since we moved to Georgia was hiking on the Appalachian Trail. And so that kind of coincides with the radio hobby because there's really no cell phone service on the Appalachian Trail. So if there's ever an emergency, cell phone's not going to work, so we do always have our handhelds with us. And there's always excellent service from Amicalola Falls for several miles. So I've got a lot of stuff going on. Sometimes it's hard to focus on just one thing, but radio is certainly becoming one of my biggest passions. Over.
Well, that's good stuff. I needed just one more second there, Rob, so I could finish my my drink and all the stuff that I do that I need to do while you guys are talking while I'm not talking. So, but anyway, old car restoration. What kind of a car is it? I'm just curious to know. That's something that I've always had a fascination with. In fact, when I was 13 or I think I was 13 years old, I bought a 1965 Chevy Impala. And my dream was to make this car beautiful. And this car was just gone. There wasn't a panel anywhere that wasn't rusted significantly. Had this thing ever been restored, it would have been a Bondo mess. But the floor pans were gone. The trunk floor was gone. The engine had a bad knock to it. Transmission was iffy at best. We'd pulled the motor and transmission, and I had actually begun putting together a 4-bolt main 350 Chevy that we were going to put a 400 crank in and make a 383 out of it. And I got a lot of that assembled, but we never got the heads done. The bottom part of the motor was mostly done, just never finished. And that's kind of the way the whole project went. By the time I turned 14, I was working a lot through the summers and didn't have time for it. And, by the time I turned 15, I was in the market for a car that actually ran, that I could drive around. And I think I was 17 or 18 years old when I sold the Impala. And it's one of those cars that I wish that I'd never sold. I wish that I'd been able to finish restoring it, but it just didn't happen. I didn't know what I was doing, and I didn't have anybody around me to kind of lead the way and guide me through it, and so the project just kind of fell to the floor. I ended up selling that car for probably somewhere in the neighborhood of twice what I had in it. They didn't want the motor, and I don't blame them. They didn't want the transmission. And they took the car. I think that car got finished, but it was not a Class A restore. It was pretty well a mudded up mess. But yeah. So what kind of a car are you restoring?
So I've had this car for about 8 years. I actually saved up a lot of money over several years. I quit smoking and took all my smoking money and put it towards saving up for a classic car. Because just like you, I've always wanted a classic car. So I spent my time and took my time and looked for one that was in pretty decent shape. And it's a 63 Ford Galaxy 500 convertible, 390 engine, 3-speed automatic transmission, and a 3.5 rear end. It was restored somewhere in the early 90s, and then it sat in a warehouse until I bought it about 7 or 8 years ago. So all the seals in the engine and transmission, the rear end were gone, the brakes were gone. So I had to go through a lot of stuff and get it back in driving condition. So I drive it around as much as I can, but it doesn't have an air conditioner, and right now driving a convertible in the middle of the day in Georgia in August, not a whole lot of fun. So
yeah, I can appreciate that. The one thing about a convertible is you, from the time that you pull out of the driveway to the time that you get to wherever it is you're going, you don't know whether or not it's going to rain somewhere along the way. I mean, this crazy weather that we've been having and these isolated thunderstorms are exactly that. They are pouring down rain in one spot and dry as a bone in the next. It was 2 or 3 years ago in the summertime. Walmart's a block and a half away from me. It's a very short walk for us to get to Walmart out of this neighborhood. We have to go past Walmart to go anywhere. It stands in our way. But there was on occasion I'd gone into Walmart to pick up a few things, and while I'm in the store I can hear that it has begun raining. And I finish my purchases and check out, and I'm standing there in that entranceway, and it is pouring down rain. It is raining buckets. It's raining so hard you can barely see the end of the parking lot. And I'm parked about halfway out there because it was perfectly clear when I arrived. I had no reason to try to park up close. But I decide I'm not going to wait around anymore. I dash out through the rain, and I get soaked. I jumped in the truck and drove it home and parked it in a driveway that was perfectly dry. Less than 1,000 feet. Just, crazy weather. So, yeah, there is a certain hazard to taking a convertible out this time of the year. You also talked about outboards. You're talking about boat motors. What nature of boat motors do you work on?
So I'm an outboard mechanic by trade. I've been an outboard mechanic for about 15 years, and I went away from that and kind of got into the R&D side with Honda Marine a little while ago. I've been working with them for a while, developing and building and designing outboard motors. So kind of one of my passions, of course, is antique stuff. So I've been really into antique outboards for as long as I can remember. And I have a small collection of Evinrudes from the 50s, and I've got one Johnson from 1923 and a couple of obscure motors, Martins, also from the early 50s, late 40s. Right now, the only ones that actually run are the late 50s Evinrudes, and believe it or not, they still run great.
Well, I know from the boats that we've had that buying a motor can be expensive, even used motors. So I would imagine that could be an expensive hobby to have any sort of a collection of. So, but I suppose it's probably also one where that collection holds its value. If at any point you needed to liquidate it, you probably could in fairly short order. If they're running, people don't seem to care how old they are. So that's interesting stuff. And you also mentioned hiking on the Appalachian trails, and that's something that 947 and I have talked a lot about getting more involved in. For health reasons and many others. It would just be fun to be out there, in the wilderness and in nature. We need to just go do it one of these days, but we haven't really engaged that. 947's done a little bit of hiking. I don't mind walking, trails, but I don't want to do don't want to do any steep grades and stuff like that. Nice flat trails are good for me. If I gotta huff and puff my way up a hill and work that hard at it, well then, it just doesn't interest me. So, but put me on the bunny slopes and I'll be good to go. All right, Rob. Well, thanks for checking in. Is this your first check-in with North Georgia GMRS?
Negative. I've checked in a handful of times. Yeah, and just to follow up on the hiking, if anybody ever wants to hike the AT, I do little short day hikes, and yeah, some of it is straight up the side of the hill, but I'm not going to do anything until the weather breaks and it's a little cooler outside. But if anybody wants to join me, just hit me up on the radio. Over.
Oh yeah, that's good stuff. And that's kind of the point of doing this, Ned, is to help folks familiarize themselves with some of our interests are, and maybe somebody will want to join along with you at some point. Maybe 947 and I will go with you. We'll see. But all right, well, good stuff. And yeah, your TAC number seems familiar to me, but for whatever reason, I don't know. My head's in a bit of a fog. I've got a little sinus thing going on. I don't know if it's allergies. I don't know if it's a cold, but it's really beating on me tonight. So you're not getting 100% out of me, but I'm doing the best I can here. So appreciate that. Next on my list is CW23 Curtis in Nicholson, Georgia. Thank you, Curtis, for checking in with us tonight. It was great to hear from you. Would have loved to have heard your story, but you're in and out, so we'll move on to Atlanta 292, Derek in Rockmart. Derek, do you have any hobbies or interests you'd like to share with the group?
Good evening, Justin, and everybody on the net. I do some woodworking in my little shop when I have time, which is not very often. Got into CB radio in the early 90s. And that's kind of carried over into GMRS. Just got my first GMRS radio first of the year, so I'm still kind of new on this side of things, but always had an interest in radios. And I play some music. I've been involved with Southern gospel music for about 25 years, play a few instruments, so really enjoy doing that. That's about all the hobbies that I have right now.
Well, woodworking is definitely one of those interests of mine. I'm not very good at it, but I enjoy it. You know, back in my younger days, spent some time engaged in, as an offshoot of my pro audio, trying to figure out how to make a living. I was involved in manufacturing loudspeaker systems, built PA systems for bands and for nightclubs and touring bands and just all of it. We built several hundred, I don't remember how many, PA systems for a large network of churches. That was probably the biggest project I'd ever engaged in, and it was a lot of work. And you know, for as big as that project was, there should have been a lot more profit in it, but it didn't work out very well for us. We didn't lose any money, but we just barely did better than break even. So my woodworking experiences from the manufacturing side of things, and of course there have been plenty of projects around here that are more of a carpentry nature than woodworking itself. But I do love to get out there and make sawdust with the table saw, drill press, the planer. I don't have a lathe. That thing scares me. I'd get a finger wrapped up in that, or I don't know. The lathe just doesn't work for my shop. But I've seen some pretty neat projects come off of a lathe. But yeah, so woodworking, that's cool stuff. CB radio, I think we've all dabbled in CB radio at one point or another. I used to be a truck driver. So all that time operating a CB radio, I didn't know anything about it. I just had a microphone and a radio, and a truck. But and you know, we do have a fair amount of musicians in the group, so that's also a great way to spend time and a good skill to have, whether you're playing regularly or just plucking away at a guitar in your living room from time to time. It's a good skill to have. So good stuff, Derek. Glad to hear from you this evening. And with that, I'm going to move on to Atlanta 442, Craig in Ackworth. Craig, you know this is all your fault, right?
I know, right? We're over 1 hour already. Hey, everybody. I got to say, first off, when I heard Maureen talking about sailing, the first thing that came to my mind was that movie, I think it was early 90s, maybe 90, 91, that movie What About Bob with Bill Murray and Richard Dreyfuss.
Yeah.
And Bill's like, you know, off-the-rails, multi-phobic type personality, and he latches on to Richard Dreyfuss as his new psychiatrist and follows him on vacation. And there's that one scene where he goes sailing with Richard Dreyfuss's daughter, and as they're coming back into the marina, they had to strap him to the mast of the sailboat to get him to go. And he just keeps saying, "I sail. I'm a sailor. Ahoy." I don't know why I thought that was funny, but that was like the first thing that came to mind when Maureen said that. Let me break. Yeah, I'm one of those types that has way too many hobbies, in addition to the radio hobby, of course. I'd say my number one is probably motorcycles. Been riding street bikes since 1990. Grew up riding dirt bikes in the 70s and 80s. I've had a couple of wrecks, one pretty significant one in 2017 that put me down for about 2 months, but I got right back on. Didn't slow me down at all. And I enjoy working on them, and I've done a few ground-up restorations in my time. One of which has been documented, and I have some videos on, if anybody's interested in that. I also dabble in retro computing, as you, Justin, know, and Atlanta 780 Houston knows. He actually sold me one. I'm into the vintage Commodore computers from the 80s, and keeping them going and working on them and that sort of thing. Let me break. Another big hobby of mine is been involved in building model airplanes and helicopters since the late 80s, and flying those. Although I've kind of been on a little hiatus with that just in the last few years. Just, you know, your interests change. That's not one that's really gone away, so it's something I've kind of had the itch to get back into. And I also have a street rod. I heard one other person mention vintage cars. I have a 27 track T Roadster that my dad and I built back in the 2000s, and he left it to me when he passed away. So it means a lot to me, and I'm keeping it going. It's got a small block 350 and a turbo 350 tranny in it. Been through several modifications. It's currently fuel injected, and I've been enjoying driving it around here in Kennesaw, Ackworth area. Let me break. And lastly, I'd say another big hobby of mine is cooking. I love to barbecue. I'm currently using a Rectech pellet smoker that I've had for about 3 years now. That's just been awesome. I mean, it's just super consistent. I mean, everything I've done on it's just been spectacular. Easy to use. It's kind of a modern piece of equipment in that it has wireless connectivity, so you can monitor your cooks and the cooker itself wirelessly with an app on your phone. You don't even have to be home. You can like check on your internal temperatures and you know, bump the temperature of the cooker up or down or whatever without being here with it physically. And that's always convenient sometimes on some of those longer cooks. But that pretty much sums it up for me. One little thing I wanted to throw out is people who are on Facebook, post up pics of some of the stuff we're talking about tonight. Somebody start a thread, and that way we can kind of see some of the stuff we're talking about.
Oh, yeah, that's a great idea. Somebody start a thread, and we can post some photos and things from our hobbying adventures. We don't have to. I mean, it's okay to post on our Facebook page of things that are not necessarily specifically radio. So feel free to tell us about yourselves. This is a community, and it's about relationships and getting to know one another. And the better we know each other, the more useful the radio becomes. So that's good stuff. And would love to have a conversation with you offline about the barbecue. I know that's something that 947 has had a lot of interest in, and so yeah, we should definitely connect at some point to discuss that to a greater length. Maybe we'll have a barbecue net one night, because that seems to be something that a lot of folks engage on. So good stuff. All right, Craig. Well, I'm going to go ahead and move on now to McDonough 32. Lance in McDonough. Lance, do you have any hobbies or interests you'd like to share with the group? All right. I'm going to go ahead and show McDonough 32 as in and out. Maybe I missed that when he checked in, but in any case, Lance, if you did want to get in here tonight, stick around and jump in here at the end. We'll definitely get your comments in. Next on my list is Atlanta 721, David in Southwest Paulding County. David, do you have any hobbies or interests you'd like to share with the group?
Yes, sir. Good evening, Justin. Good evening, everyone on the net. Real quick before I get started, did you hear that they are coming out with a alcoholic Mountain Dew next year?
I did not know. The only alcoholic versions of Mountain Dew that I've ever encountered have been from jars without a label.
Roger that. Yeah, I just heard on the radio yesterday that they are coming out with a no caffeine, but a 5% alcohol Mountain Dew for next year. So we'll see how that plays out on the market.
Well, that is interesting. I'd not heard that, so I'll have to look into that. I'm not sure how interested I am in it, because the handful of adult beverages that I do enjoy are generally cola based, or I do like a nice smooth bourbon neat. I don't even want ice in it. Ice just melts and waters it down. Just neat. It doesn't have to be chilled. Room temperature is just fine. And I like a good sipping whiskey. But tell us about your hobbies and interests.
Well, since I spend most of my time working, I got into building AR-15s there for a little while. The market kind of dried up last year with not being able to get any parts. It was more or less just between me and some of the other superintendents with my company that we were building them and changing them around and things like that. So that kind of got to be a hobby until that dried up, and then the radio started. So pretty much my hobbies now are the radios, figuring out what antenna works where and where I can get contacts out. I've got a Toyota Tacoma, so I'm into the trail riding. The Tacomas are like Jeeps. You can just add so many things to them. So yeah, that's my thing, is just going outdoors and doing a little bit of trail riding and some light gunsmithing.
Very interesting. For a time, my dad was into reloading, and it was just fascinating to me to watch him load 100 rounds or a couple of hundred rounds on a Thursday or a Friday, and then go out and shoot them on Saturday. Very enjoyable time to sit there and go through, bullet by bullet, and measuring and filling and crimping and that whole process. but never really got into assembling or disassembling the firearm itself. That was really the reloading was the thing that I thought was really fascinating. But we just do a very minimal amount of shooting around here, so just enough to remember how to do it, and hope that we don't need to. But definitely, that's something that I've always had a mild interest in, is the whole buying the components and assembling a weapon, from that level up, is something I think would be a very cool skill to have, and a very the things that you're never going to learn. It's just like being an appliance operator with a radio. There's things you're never going to learn if all you ever do is hit the push to talk button, and it just works. If you've never had to make adjustments to SWR on an antenna, try to tune an antenna, or if you've never had to change out a lightning arrestor, or ground a radio system, then there's things that you're just not going to learn just by being an appliance operator. And I think the same thing is true in just about everything, and certainly in firearms. If you've never assembled a firearm, there's probably a lot of things that you could benefit in terms of general knowledge and how things work, and how your particular firearm works, if you understood its inner workings to that degree. So that's pretty cool stuff. And yeah, the radio hobby, like we talked about, there's no end, when it comes to what you can learn and what you can do. And even if you never venture beyond GMRS, things like antennas. We have Jesse. Is Jesse 720? I think Jesse is 720. We haven't heard from Jesse for a while. He has a challenging work schedule, and the net starts after his bedtime. But Jesse is one who actually makes antennas. He's actually fabricated an antenna tower, and that's something that has been an interest of mine, is fabricating a Yagi or even an Omni for GMRS. I've got a J-pole hanging up here, but it was put together by some dude in California named Ed Fong, and it's a great antenna, but I didn't build it. So all that I can claim to that is having pulled it out of its old leaking tube and putting it into a new tube, and I think it's leaking again. So I'm going to have to get up there and deal with that antenna here real soon. But there's no end. I mean, and that Ed Fong antenna is one that you could likely lay out and replicate or duplicate fairly easily, but it's there's enough going on with it that you'd really need to understand what you're doing, I think, in order to be able to do it correctly. So good stuff. All right, well, I'm going to take some notes here because for whatever reason I didn't do it while you were talking, and then I'm going to move on to Atlanta 434 Ron. Incoming. Ron is in and out with us tonight. Hopefully Ron will be able to join us very soon once he finishes his pool tournaments. And that brings me next to Atlanta 26, Flip in Druid Hills. Flip, do you have any interests or hobbies you'd like to share with the group?
Well, hey, Justin, and I just wanted to shout out to 180, Mike, and thank him, and great to see everybody last Saturday. It was a lot of fun. I love to do, like Craig, I have a lot of hobbies, but one of the hobbies that I have is barbecuing and or smoking. And I don't know if you saw my post. I was excited the other day. I was smoking some salmon on cedar plank and green beans with a little gorgonzola and mushrooms and pecans. So, yeah, I have a lot of fun doing that. Did you ever hear the story, Justin, about the guy that developed the big green egg?
I don't recall. Why don't you tell the story?
So his name is Ed. I can't think of his last name right now, but he was a fighter pilot in Vietnam. And he was over there and hanging out, flying sorties, dropping bombs, coming back, hanging out. And he saw the local population was cooking on these Kamado clay pots. And so later in life, he gets back here to Atlanta, and he's got a boat dealership up on near Gainesville and for Lake Lanier. And he's trying to get people interested in coming to look and get excited about boats. So he gets one of these Kamado pots that he brought back from Vietnam, and he starts smoking up ribs and stuff and offering them to people that come out. And the next thing you know, they were coming there to get the barbecue more than they were the boats. So he went into he developed this big green egg, and the rest is history.
Well, that's interesting. I didn't know any of that about the big green egg. I always kind of wondered because it just sort of appeared out of nowhere. I mean, never heard of, seen one, didn't know anything about a big green egg, and then all of a sudden they kind of show up everywhere, and people are raving about them. So I guess I don't know enough about it to know what makes it special in the way that it cooks. It looks like it's just a big clay pot, and I don't even see where you have airflow for the fire. But like I say, I've never been up close to one to be able to understand it. It's just a big mysterious thing to me.
Well, the airflow goes from the bottom up through the charcoal up to the top around the meat, etc. But the key is that unlike a Weber kettle or another barbecue pit made out of metal, these are made out of thick clay, and almost like a pot you would plant a bunch of plants in. And they're extremely efficient, so they don't lose heat at all. And so you can tailor down the temperature to whatever you want, and then it just sits there rock solid for hours and hours. It's awesome.
So you can cook at a lower temperature for a longer period of time, and not have tough meat. Is that what I'm hearing?
Low and slow, baby.
Yes, and that is definitely my preferred way. I have learned I've learned how to adjust my gas grill to really closely control temperature. I really enjoy cooking on. We have a charcoal grill, but what I've enjoyed doing is instead of I might use a little bit of charcoal to get things started, but we take the hickory and the cherry firewood that we have around here, and throw that in there instead of or in addition to the charcoal, and cook on wood. And the challenge there is getting it closed up and tight so that you can control that burn, and not let things get too hot. And then, of course, anytime you open the lid, all of that controlled air goes out the window, and you've got about 45 seconds to do whatever you're going to do before that oxygen gets in there and starts that fire and gets things crazy. So you have to be quick, and if you've got 10 burgers to cook, I don't recommend doing it on a wood-fired grill. But if you're cooking a pork butt and you're only going to turn it every 45 minutes or hour and a half or whatever that might be, then I love doing the wood-fired barbecue grill. It's something that we've enjoyed here for a long time, and we do it indirectly. So I'll start the fire on one side of the grill and have the meat on the other side of the grill. And what I like to do is get the fire going and get my temperature down, because it's usually pretty hot when you first start, and then bring the meat out once I've got the grill under control. It takes a little bit to get that balanced out. But maybe the big green egg would do all of that with a little less effort, a little more simplistically. It sounds like it's all about controlling the fire and the fuel and directing the smoke. Never been really a fan of smoking with charcoal, but if you throw some wood chips in there with it, it should be just fine.
Oh yeah, you definitely put, they use lump charcoal, natural lump, so it's got a good base of heat, but yeah, you definitely put a bunch of wood in there as well. And the Traeger system seems to be the pioneer of wood cooking. That's a pretty good system too, although not as efficient in terms of keeping the heat in as the Big Green Egg.
All that clay, I'm sure, does a great job of insulating. You don't dare touch any of my grills when they're going. You'll leave skin behind if you do. So good stuff. Well, what else have you got for us tonight, Flip?
Well, I'm thinking about what we are going to talk about next week when you're out. I've got a couple of good ideas, and I will post something on Facebook here pretty shortly. So keep an eye out for that.
You know, I had nearly forgotten, but indeed I've got family that's going to be visiting next week, so I will be unavailable for the net. Flip has volunteered to stand in for us yet again, so thank you for that, Flip. And yeah, everybody stay tuned. Flip's going to make an announcement on Facebook in the next few days of what the topic will be for a conversation next week. And again, thanks for covering for me. I appreciate that. All right, then, let's move on next to Atlanta 32. Chris in Oklahoma City. Chris is out there on the highway delivering this nation's goods. So thank you for that service, Chris. Appreciate that. We have Atlanta 138, Robert in Auburn. Robert is in and out tonight. He might be able to join us after practice. We have Atlanta 417, William in Auburn. William, do you have any hobbies or interests you'd like to share with the group?
Yeah, Justin, good evening to everybody. I hope this radio's getting out. I laid some more cables today, so hopefully it's still working. Anyway, I have a little wood shop out back, make a few bird houses every now and then, and that's pretty much it since I've retired. I've been keeping up with the house and cutting grass and normal things like that.
Ah, yes, the homeowner hobbies, the landscaping and keeping the grass under control and property maintenance and etc. That definitely keeps me busy as well. And you know, I came across a stack of couple dozen-ish license plates. I don't know, 6, 7, 8 years ago. And we made a bunch of birdhouses. We took the license plate and gave it a 90-ish degree, probably more like about 110-degree bend right in the middle there, and used the license plates for roofs for these birdhouses and made Christmas gifts out of them for family members and friends and whatnot. And that was a fun project. One of the probably cooler projects that ever came out of my shop. Some of the other things that we've built in that shop have been built a bed for our master bedroom. You know, I'd been doing a lot of flying with Southwest Airlines and Delta and some of the others, and they've got this stupid little magazine in the back of the seats for you to look at while you're on the airplane, and Sky Mall, I think it's called. And in this magazine, they showed this base for a bed that had these drawers in it that were great for like extra dresser space, extra storage in these drawers in the bed. And I thought, well, shoot, that looks like that would be a pretty simple project to build. But at the time, I didn't have any tools. So rather than spend $500 on buying their bed and having it shipped to us to assemble at home, I thought, I'm going to buy the material and I'll buy the tools and I'm going to make that bed. So we made that bed for probably somewhere in the area of $600 or $700. But we're still using it today, and the drawers are working great. And I love the cedar insets in the drawers, and it's been a great project. So can get a lot of satisfaction from that. I'm just not very good at it, but woodworking is definitely a fun project, a fun skill to have. Thank you for that, William, and look forward to hearing more from you as we go. Next on my list is Atlanta 657, Sam in Canton. Sam, I enjoyed meeting you at the gathering last weekend, and it was very nice to be able to put that voice with a face. So thanks for coming out and hanging out with us. Sam, do you have any hobbies or interests you'd like to share with the group?
Yeah, hello everyone, and hi Justin. It was also good to meet you there at the barbecue, and shout out to 180 Mike for getting that all set up. I really appreciate it. Had a real good time. Yeah, as far as hobbies, I stay really busy with work. Several jobs, actually, mostly computer jobs, of course, down here in my basement right now. So some of my hobbies, I collect a lot of, like, obsolete type of equipment, like old radios, formats that don't work anymore, like 8-track tapes and reel-to-reel cassettes, and record players, things like that, and all kind of computers, just surrounded by tons of electronics break. But I do like getting out occasionally, and when I do, kayaking. I like to go down to Etowah right here, kayak down that a little bit, and over at Carter's Lake. I do a little fishing occasionally. And when they mentioned us selling, I used to do selling. I lived up at Cape Cod for about 10 years. I had a sailboat up there, and do miss that. That was a lot of fun going on the ocean. It's just nothing like getting out there and just the wind at your face, and you just going down the coast right there. It's a lot of fun.
Well, indeed, and I have to wonder, the old electronics. Don't tell Atlanta 403 that the 8-track tapes are obsolete. That would just break his heart to know that. And certainly don't tell him that the flip phones are no longer current either. Whatever you do, mum's the word on that. But yeah, that's a fascinating collection. And the old reel-to-reel decks and turntables and stuff. I have an interest in an old turntable. When you go to look at turntables these days, you have to wonder, do they have the RIAA equalization built into them before they go to Bluetooth or whatever it is that they do? So many of these record players now have USB cords attached to them instead of RCA cables coming out like the old turntables that I'm familiar with had. I had a pair of Technics direct drive turntables back in the days when I used to DJ, and man, I would love to get my hands on one of those. But the few that I've seen that I've come across have been either in very poor condition or crazy expensive. And if I'd had any idea that those turntables would be worth what they are today, I certainly would never have gotten rid of them. But would definitely love to have something to spin some vinyl on these days. So that's fascinating. I'd love to see that collection sometime.
Oh yeah, definitely. It is interesting. If you watch some of the YouTube videos, like with Tecmon, he kind of goes in about what's still out there, what they're making now. With, the cassette decks, a lot of it's the same manufacturers, and quality's not so good. But yeah, collecting some of the old. I guess as time goes by, it gets more and more expensive, of course, with the older stuff, I guess.
Yeah, it's really fascinating too that back in the 80s and 90s, analog audio was consumer audio was really good, and especially when you got into the mid-range and the high-end stuff, you had really good quality audio products available, and you could have excellent quality sound reproduction in your home for $1,000 ish. And of course, the more you spend, the better you're going to get. But there's also decent systems in the $200 range, and so you could get into decent audio equipment pretty cheaply back in those days. And I think that's probably where a lot of us developed our love for those electronics and those systems and putting together audio systems, because there was so much out there, and it was good. It was good stuff. Not all of it was great stuff, but for the level of enthusiasm that a young guy would have, it's pretty cool that you could put a nice system together for just a few $100. And if you had $1,000 or more, you could put together some really nice equipment with some high-end speakers, amplifiers, etc. Once had a Macintosh amplifier, and I tell you, I've also had Soundcraft amplifiers and some other high-end amplifiers, and I tell you, that's not an area where I can hear a difference. And I can hear a difference in a lot of areas, but the amplifiers are so good, the inexpensive amplifiers are so good compared to those high-end amps that that's just not a place where it's worth spending the money, at least in my opinion. But there's no end, just like everything else in radio. There's no end to the tweaks and adjustments that you can make in high-end audio to get to that one next level. A friend of mine had a system that was just phenomenal, and you could listen to a record on his system and hear things that you'd never heard before. You could hear telephones ringing in the background that you wouldn't hear if you were listening to the same music on a cassette in your car. You just simply wouldn't hear it. But on his system had the clarity that you could pick up on these things. And it's funny because we would be playing music and stop and turn it down to go answer the phone and nobody's there. But when you've got the music turned up, that phone was ringing. And you know for sure that phone was ringing. Well, it was ringing in a recording. You just never heard it before. So, neat stuff. All right, Sam. Well, that's very interesting stuff. And like I said, I would love to see the collection one of these days. Let's move on to Atlanta 5-7 and see what Club 215 has going on tonight. And what hobbies and interests would you like to talk about?
Good evening, Justin, and everyone on the net. Well, I guess radio would be the first one, even though I'm not a very good hobbyist, as I think I've said before at other nets. Don't do a whole lot with it here recently. Surprised I'm here this evening. Anyway, I guess something drew me to it. So that would be number one, but I don't do a very good job at it. Next kind of interest would be a little bit of the family cave that I have kind of set up out here in the garage at the house with arcade machines and Coke machines that have, obviously some Coke in them and Sprite and some adult beverages as well. That's kind of the other thing that we like to do over here. And really, other than that, not a whole lot more. Work consumes a lot of my time. Family consumes a lot of my time, even out here in the garage that we'll call Club 215, as many people have heard it called. So that's pretty much what we got going on over here. Not much else to report. Back to net control.
Well, I tell you, Andrew, I think the Club 215 thing has been going on for at least as long, if not longer, than the Tiki Bar. And, the way that I see it, it's your version of that. It's your place of zen. It's your place where you enjoy spending time, and I know that your family does as well. So that's cool stuff. And so my space is more of an outdoor space, and so to introduce things like an arcade game, it'd be out in the rain, and I don't know how long it's going to last like that. But Andrew, have you ever considered the DIY multi-game arcade games that are based on a LED CRT screen and a Raspberry Pi built into a large wooden cabinet? You ever consider making one of those?
Yes, I have. I've actually built a small-scale version of those with RetroPie as the operating system and put them on the TV before. Have not done it in a cabinet setup, but I have thought about it. So, good thinking and good intuition on your part. I've also thought about doing what's called a main setup as well, which is actually a PC that goes into an arcade cabinet and then you make all the different inputs that come into it via like a board interface and so on and so forth. So yes, no, I have looked into that. I have not gotten very far with it, but yes, we do have actually 2 of them built on a Raspberry Pi B3, and then also the new Raspberry Pi 4, and they're both running RetroPie on them with a whole bunch of ROMs built into them.
Very interesting stuff. That's a project that I think that I would enjoy. The 2 problems, though, is one, if I put something like that together, I have to figure out where to put it. Where 947 would let me put it. So that kind of means no. And then the other problem with that is I would enjoy putting the cabinet together, but the programming of the Pi and all of that's not something that I want to spend my time on. So we may have to coordinate a project and put something like that together that can live at Club 215 in a space that is conducive to its being in that environment, and I think that we could both enjoy that. So we might have to collaborate on that one of these days. So good stuff, Andrew. Thanks for all of that, and tell everybody over at the club that we said hello. Next on my list is Atlanta 252, Shad in Emerson. Shad, do you have any hobbies or interests you'd like to share with the group?
At this point, I think a little amateur gold prospecting and Civil War relic hunting, seeing how we're down here on the Altoona Pass battlefield area. And most recently, I guess, is radios.
Well, that's fantastic. I knew there'd be a gold panner in the group somewhere, and I'm fascinated with that. There's a guy that I knew at church that we'd often talked about. He was going to take me to a couple of places, and he was quite certain that I would find something. Probably not much, but I would find something if I'd go with him. He said that he'd find something almost every time that he goes panning, and he was very excited about it. And I was very excited about it too. We just never could seem to get our schedules together. He's retired, so he'd do all his panning during the work week while I'm at the office. So try to catch up with him on a Saturday, and he had other things to do. But that's fascinating stuff. And of course, hunting the Civil War relics. Back home where I'm from, there was no Civil War activity in that area. So you might find Indian arrowheads from time to time, but you would never find a cannonball or musket rounds in the trees or anything like that. You would never find that in that area. But and if you did, you could pretty well rest assured that it was not authentic. I recall when I was in elementary school, one of my classmates brought a lead ball into the classroom saying it was from the Civil War, and I don't believe that it ever was. I think that was just a story. But here, it's totally believable. And the Civil War stories, the story about the general, the locomotive down there in Kennesaw, and we were just there at Cooper's Branch. Well, just the other side of 75 is the old Cooper's furnace, and I remember the story of the general. The Cooper's furnace is where that switch locomotive was at that soldiers used to chase the Union soldiers and get back the general. So Julie and I stumbled across that Cooper's Furnace Park on our way to Cartersville one time. We decided to spend some time there and take a look around. And man, it's just around here there are so many things that connect to stories that we've been told and history that we know, and there's so much history that you can touch and feel and know is real, whereas where I'm from there's not very much of that. I mean, there's not very much of that at all. Fort Wayne, Indiana is named for the fort that General Anthony Lee Wayne had created back in, I don't even remember when. And there is actually an old military fort there, and they have in the efforts of restoring the fort, they have disassembled it, and it's an old log structure, and so they have gone through to try to restore some of the pitch in between the logs, and so different groups have done this at different times through history, and several of them have done it wrong. They've done it without the authentic materials, or they've done this. So nowadays, when you go through and you visit the old fort, it's a mess. It's a mess. So it's just been ruined by all these different groups that either didn't know what they were doing, or didn't have the funding to do it the right way, or didn't have the knowledge to do it the right way. And so to try to appreciate the history of that fort is really challenging to do. It's a lot cooler in Georgia to be able to go out to an old battlefield and watch a reenactment and know that this is very much like what actually took place. So cool stuff, Shad. Do you engage in any of those reenactments?
No, sir. We've been to a few over here out in a past battlefield over recent years. Actually donated some Civil War era pistol bullets that we found over here where General Hood had camped at one point that the reenactors did not have.
Very, very cool stuff. 947 and I have been to the Resaca battlefield reenactment, and that was a very cool thing. We would definitely enjoy going to more of that and seeing more of those kind of things take place. But let's see what happens here as time goes on as to how many of those events are going to actually be held. We're kind of shifting gears ourselves, and we're gonna kind of shelter in place a little bit here for a little while and see how this latest round of the Delta variant shakes out. But neat stuff. Glad to hear of that, and yeah, that's cool that you found some rounds that were historically relevant that they didn't have as part of their collection. So what a cool contribution to make. Next on my list, I have Atlanta 313, Stacy in Emerson. Stacy, do you have any hobbies or interests you'd like to share with the group?
Atlanta 312. I'm broad. I like cars. I like muscle cars. Obviously, I do the T-shirts and all of that. Trivia. I just recently joined a women's gun chapter, local gun chapter. I'm just all across the board. I like a lot of stuff.
Yeah, so the women's gun chapter, is that something where you meet as a group of women and learn about weapons? Do you just practice? Do you just talk about what does that involve?
We meet, we learn about the guns, learn about defense, what to do in certain situations, and we have like 15-20 minute range time, and then we go up and
Yes, indeed. And, there again, I think that engaging in a hobby to that depth, just, you're going to have far greater knowledge than if you're just if you just show up at the range and shoot. So, yeah, I think that there's a lot of value in that. And just like radio, if you're just an appliance operator, that's okay to get your foot in the door, and it's valid, it's legitimate. You don't have to, especially in GMRS radio, you don't have to be widely knowledgeable about radio. You can just get the HT and plug in the PL tone and press to talk, and if that's all you do, that's okay. The important thing is to get on the air, and same thing I'm sure is true with firearms. The important thing is to be competent. And
No, just like you said with the reloading stuff, you do have to stay within safety parameters with anything else. I mean, there's a lot of hobbies that all of us have talked about that are dangerous, and if you go by the book and stay within the parameters, it's perfectly safe. And like I said, you can build way more accurate loads, and that's fun and enjoyable to me. Like you said when you were watching your dad do it when you were a kid, it's just relaxing, and you just sit there and focus on what you're doing.
Oh yeah, and that was I think one of the big things that for him was it was a very relaxing thing to do, very peaceful, a little bit tedious. I remember Mom always commenting about how it looks like it's so boring, but when you think about what you're doing and the consequences, if you aren't careful about it, it's not really all that boring anymore. But nonetheless, that's cool stuff. Well, I suppose one of these days I'm going to have to come tour your reloading setup and see if that familiarizes myself with those memories from long ago. I would love to have a look at that bench. Next on my list is Atlanta 753 Mike in Land O'Lakes, Florida. Mike is in and out with us tonight, checking in on Zello. Appreciate you hanging out with us, Mike. It's great to have you in here, and I'm trying to understand what that message means. But great to have you in here, and thanks for hanging out with us. Let me take a quick break. And that brings me also to Atlanta 503, Paul in Buford. Paul is in and out with us tonight. So thanks, Paul, for checking in. Glad to have you in here. And we also have Moreland 20. Scott in Moreland is in and out with us tonight. Scott has been instrumental in making Zello come back to life, and it's been great working with Scott on that project. And hopefully with some fine-tuning, Zello will be far more reliable than it has been of recent days and weeks and months. So we're looking forward to those improvements there. Scott is in and out with us tonight, so thank you, Scott, for checking in and monitoring. We also have Atlanta 83, Pete in Dahlonega. Pete is in and out with us this evening. So, Pete, thank you for checking in and monitoring with us. And that brings me to the end of the list. So at this time, Net Control is going to take a little break. We'll accept additional late check-ins, and any questions or comments, the floor will be open for members. So at this time, Net Control standing by.
5-7 Net Control.
Andrew, go ahead.
I don't know how I let this slip my mind, but someone had mentioned it earlier, talking about grills and whatnot. I am a RecTech owner as well. Enjoy it thoroughly. Use it a good amount of time, and also love my Blackstone griddle as well. And I'm going to post some pictures on Facebook here just in a little bit, and Club 215 does have an AKA as well, and I'll let y'all see that when it's on Facebook there. But it'll all kind of be tied together once you see it. Just wanted to throw that in there.
Well, fantastic. Yes, and mine is not a Blackstone. It's I don't even know what brand it is. It's the reason I got my griddle is because it's larger than a Blackstone I saw at Walmart, and it's about the same money, and it's a 3-burner instead of a 2-burner, and most of the time I can do whatever I'm going to do on 2 burners on that Blackstone, and it gives me a cool zone that I can move things to and kind of slow things down or speed things up as needed. So I really like having that extra space on there, and there have been plenty of occasions where I've got that whole thing filled up and wished I had a little more room. So love the griddle out at the Tiki Bar. In fact, I'm out there almost every day. preparing something on that griddle. Usually it's breakfast, but many times lunch or dinner gets prepared out there as well. So we absolutely love the griddle, mostly because we love the outdoor kitchen and not having to mess up or heat up the kitchen in the house where the air conditioning is running. So good stuff. All right, Andrew, I'm going to go ahead and open up the floor again. Any additional late check-ins and any comments, the floor is open.
Hey, Net Control, this is Atlanta 122. I don't have Facebook account and have no plans of getting one, so how is it that we can contact each other than just kind of, clicking the air and finding out if anybody's online?
Well, Maureen, I understand that you're not planning to get on Facebook, and that's okay. But we do pass a lot of information on Facebook. There's there's a lot of questions that get answered with technical, nature behind them about antennas or about radios or about car installs. A lot of photographs of events or people's radios and installs. Sometimes when people ask me a question or when they ask a question, I will, whenever I can and whenever it's relevant, answer with an explanation and a photo. These are all things that we can't really do on the radio. It's just an extension of the relationship that we have. I don't have a suggestion for you other than Facebook. And in the absence of that, then yes, come on the radio and ask the questions. And it may be difficult to illustrate some concepts without having a photograph to show you, but nonetheless, the members here will definitely do whatever they can to answer questions, and it doesn't necessarily have to be radio related. So if you wanted to come on and talk about sailboats, and somebody else is on here with you and has an interest in that conversation, there were a number of people that mentioned sailing this evening, you certainly are welcome to do that. It doesn't have to be a conversation about radio stuff. You'll hear 947 and I on the radio talking about anything and everything. Sometimes radio and sometimes dinner and sometimes dogs, and it just, there's no end to what it might be. So if you don't have Facebook, then radio is where you should be. Does that answer your question?
I think one of the biggest problems is trying to find out if the other person is online or not. I know I talked to Gary over at the picnic about email letters and all of that. So, there's other options as well for those of us who don't want to get on Facebook, but, it's personal choice. So I appreciate it. So Atlanta 122, clear.
Yeah, and if you have the other person's email addresses, that is a good alternative. And there's no prohibition about sharing that information, but as an organization, we're not going to reveal anyone's email address. So, even I don't have access to them. So unless someone has given me their email address, or I have engaged in with somebody with an email conversation, I don't have the address. I don't have the membership roster. I see the same membership roster that everybody else sees. I don't have a version of it that can be printed or searched or anything like that. So that information is held very privately, and it's for administrative purposes only, and we don't want to abuse that. So as an organization, we're not going to release that kind of information to the membership. But if the members themselves choose to release that kind of contact information, by all means, we have no objection to that. We want to respect the members' private contact information. So, and if anybody needs to reach me, it's pretty easy. It's Justin at ngmrs.org. If you have a question that you don't want to put on Facebook, you can reach out to me that way. And that's a pretty public address and pretty simple to remember. So that's one avenue, but it'll be challenging for me to be able to make connections with other members. So because I don't have everybody's address. So good stuff, Maureen, and definitely a worthwhile question. So wish I had a better answer for you, but we do utilize Facebook probably more than we should. But I tell you, we've considered alternatives, and I personally have experimented at length with MeWe as an alternative to Facebook. And what I've found is that there are hundreds of North Georgia GMRS members that actively engage in and participate in our Facebook page, and there are 2 or 3, literally only 2 or 3 on MeWe. So it's not an effective alternative, and email can be a good tool, but it's a lot more cumbersome to make an email broadcast than it is to do a Facebook post and have people comment there. Emails can be very convoluted and confusing, especially when they become a long thread. So, yeah, it is an alternative. Any additional late check-ins or questions, comments? Net Control standing by.
Atlanta 721 with a question.
Atlanta 721. David, go ahead.
Well, I am not a web designer. I was just curious, is there a way to add a discussion forum to the North Georgia GMRS's website? I have no idea about these things. I don't know what that would entail.
Yeah, I'm certain that there is. I'm certain that those tools exist. I'm not the one that would be able to go about building something like that. So, and let me back up a little bit. Let's back up about 3 years, I suppose, when Julie was the primary net control coordinator. This was her gig entirely. I just kind of came along for the ride. And at that time, the leadership was wanting to kind of focus more on having things arranged around the web page. And I don't know, it became difficult for us to do certain things on the web page, to make announcements or posts and things like that on the web page. And at the same time, it was very easy to do those things on Facebook. So Facebook just kind of became the default mode of communication. So that's where, I make my weekly announcements of what the net topic is going to be, and that's where many of the announcements get made. Most of the information that we convey that I don't broadcast over the air as an announcement on the net night gets handled through the Facebook page. And so, that's just a reality. At the same time, I completely understand people not wanting to be on Facebook. And I tell you, if it weren't for North Georgia GMRS, I probably would have dropped Facebook years ago. Most of the reason that I'm on Facebook is because I want to be connected to this group of people right here. If collectively we would all agree to go to MeWe and drop Facebook, we could do that, but I don't think that's going to happen. So, the answer to your question, David, is yes. I just don't know how to implement it, or who would be our guy to implement it. So that's something that we can definitely consider moving forward. And if we can find the right tools and the right people, maybe we can make something like that happen. I would not have my feelings hurt if we were able to transition out of Facebook altogether. But for now, I think that's probably going to be the platform that we use primarily for news and announcements and information. Net Control going to stand by one more time for any additional check-ins or any additional comments. Hey, John, go ahead.
Actually, I just wanted to see if I was able to transmit. I moved back inside, and earlier this morning I was unable to acknowledgement.
All right. Well, when you threw your TAC number out there, we heard you very well, and then let's see, it's frozen, and I don't know why. We heard you very well, and then when you came back the second time, you were washing in and out. So if you're using an HT and moving around, sometimes that can be a problem. And as I heard Atlanta 83 mentioned on the air earlier today, sometimes with an HT, you can be full quieting and move 6 inches and have your signal drop out completely. So that's the challenge with an HT. And folks everywhere should know that when you're using a handy-talkie, it's important that you find the places around your home or your property where it performs well, and also know where some of the nulls are so you can avoid them. And once you find a good spot to transmit from, try not to move around while you're talking. Just that little bit of movement. Like if you're sitting in a chair and you're swinging back and forth, that little bit of movement can be enough to have your signal full quiet and crystal clear, and then drop out and it's full of noise, and then back to full quiet. And that can be challenging for the listener on the other end. So, but when you can make an HT work and you have a comfortable spot to transmit from, there's very little that's better. So congratulations on that. We used to be able to hit, excuse me, let me break. Sorry about that. A little tickle in my throat. We used to be able to hit pine log with an HT from just about any place in the front yard. In fact, the very first handful of nets that 947 was net controller on was done with an HT. Not recommended. We do not recommend that you do a net with an HT for the reasons that I just spoke about. Anyone who wishes to be a guest net controller needs to have a base radio. That is one of the requirements that we've set forth for that function. But to move on, the HTs can be a challenge in that way. So hope that answers your question, John. Do we have any other questions, comments? Net control standing by. Fantastic. Well, at this time, I think you will go ahead and wrap this thing up, and we'll close the net for tonight. And I thought I had my page, but I thought incorrectly. So this will conclude the North Georgia GMRS Regional Net. Tonight we had a total of 36 check-ins, including myself. Net control will now return repeaters back to normal use. Everyone who signed in should sign out. Thank you for allowing me to serve as your net control this evening. This was a great net, a lot of fun, and really enjoyed the conversation with all of you. Good night, everyone. This is Atlanta 946 WQIR 514, and I'm clear. YouTube, thank you. Apologize for the coughs and stuff. I'm having a tough time tonight. I've got the sinus thing going on, and it has definitely impacted me in a big way. But it's great to hear all of you in here, and thanks for hanging out and tagging along. I'm going to go ahead and hit this button here, and we'll yeah, I got to go. Sorry, folks. This is Justin signing off.
WRC 853, Atlanta 252, clear.